Imelda Vanek, applicant, owner is Imelda Vanek, applicant is Martin and Erin Mills. Would you please come up? Okay, would you please state your name and addresses, please, for the record?
Hi, my name is Imelda Vanek.
Okay. Sir?
Martin Mills.
Martin Mills, okay, and,
Erin Cadigan.
all right, we have a mistake there. We have you
Well,
as,
and we're married. People like to do that.
you're Erin Cudigan, C-U-D-I-G-A-N?
C-A-D-I-G-A-N.
C-A-D-I-G-A-N. Okay. Want to get that right. Is that the way it is on the application?
Yes,
Erin
Cadigan.
Cadigan and Martin Mills is on the application. Applicant name, Martin / Erin. Oh, last, I get it. I got you. First name's Martin and the other name's Erin and last name's Mills and the other name's Cadigan. Okay. The applicant is seeking an area variance from 405-34H, parentheses 1, for the purpose of parking 7 vehicles for a boarding house. There is no off-street parking and an on-street parking is limited. Variance seeks to use a municipal lot that is 750 feet away from 426 Hasbrouck Avenue, which is outside the 400 feet allowable parameter for a waiver. We're a little... Hi, what's...
Are you doing comments? Is it a public hearing yet?
On what?
Is it a public hearing yet? Are you doing
What?
comments? Agenda item?
For this agenda item? No, I'll call you up when we're done presenting. I thought you had wanted to comment on the other one. Okay. All right, so this is really a mix of both planning board responsibilities and zoning board, because the planning board will have to approve your boarding house for a special use, and they also are the ones that give the waiver when you're within 400 feet of the municipal parking lot. They do the waiver on that. So you're kind of asking us for an in-between of a waiver to use the municipal lot 750 feet away, which is a first for me doing this. Yes.
Right. I just want to say that we already went in front of the planning board, and they decided to table their decision
Until we made ours.
until you decided whether or not we could have a variance on the parking, because then if we had parking, because we've received the variance, then they're simply making a decision on whether or not to give us the special use permit.
I understand that
Okay.
they sent you here. In my 10 years, I've never had a decision on something like this, so there's always something new. Now, I have gone on that street. I drive that street as I go to the YMCA, and I go mornings, midday, early evening, whatever, and there are a lot of cars parked on the street on those various times, and there's not a lot of spots there with those cars. And in fact, there's even a sign, 20-minute parking for some little small spot. I don't know what that's all about. That's for the daycare center. Okay, thank you, Eric. So there, in my opinion, as I view it on different days, I don't see any room on the street during the day, midday, evening, whatever. There's a lot of hospital overflow, I think, from the parking lot. So you're saying if you get this variance, people residing, how many people will be residing in your boarding house?
There are 7 rooms.
Yeah.
6 would be for tenants, and 1 would be kind of for an avatar of ourselves that would be
So 6 rooms
living
for-
at the boarding house to...
6 rooms for tenants and then 1 for the supervisor?
Yes,
So you're going to need 6 spots minimum for the tenants. And you're saying that these 6 individuals will travel down to the municipal parking lot, and I believe it's a paid lot, are going to pay to park there?
It's only paid during the day.
I mean,
Overnight is free.
What's the day hours?
I believe it's 9 to 6.
But that's still 6
Right.
6 hours times what, 25 cents an hour? It's,
You can buy a permit.
you
I
can
believe,
buy a
as well.
permit?
Yeah, and I do drive to the Y 3 times a week as well, down that street, and
I thought you looked familiar.
yeah, right. You know, the street does get a lot of overflow from the hospital, that's true, but the Jensen lot is never anywhere near
Yeah, I don't
close to
see a lot of
full.
cars in here. How much is a permit?
I do not know how much the permit is. We'd certainly work with anybody that was a tenant of ours to make sure they got that.
Well, I'll be right up front, then I'm going to turn it over to the board. My question is, and concern is, if we grant this variance, how is there going to be enforcement of it? It's like impossible for enforcement to know if one of the residents of the boarding house is parking on the street. And we're not going to put a police officer there to check our decision. That's my concern. If someone has a solution to that, I'd be happy to hear it.
why would, if you don't mind me asking, why because somebody at the boarding house has a parking spot in the Jensen lot, would that mean that they shouldn't be allowed to park on the street? Any other neighborhood
that-
home is allowed to park
I
on the
would think
street?
that's your basis of your, see, this is why we're getting convoluted. We either need to consider an area variance for on-street parking,
Mm-hmm.
but your variance request is for the Jansen parking lot, 750 feet, that we're not going to have any on-street parking. We're going to go down to Jansen Street parking. If you want an area variance for on-street parking, then that's a different request. Am I correct, Eric?
Correct, and I would ask if this was a recommendation from the planning board, or is this?
You can't have the best of both worlds in the area variance request.
I guess we see the off-street parking 450 feet from any public lot as the best option, given that we don't expect all the tenants to have cars, and we don't expect, a lot of cars to be attached to that property. I think that it is a preferable option for tenants to have that parking space in the Jansen lot and to provide some sort of permit.
How do we know they're using it? I'm opening this up to the board
Yeah,
at this
I have a
point.
question.
Sure.
Does it really matter? I mean,
Well, yes, because we're either going to grant an area variance for on-street parking, but that's not what this says. This is for a waiver, so to speak, to park in the Jansen
yeah,
instead of on-street.
but issuing a variance, as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, for this use, as it relates to the Jensen municipal parking lot, that's, if we want to make it on the merits of that, which is what they're asking for, that's fine, but how does that prohibit somebody from parking on the street that's
lives in-
perfectly legally able
Well,
to park on the street?
Because because it's a boarding house, and the requirement for a boarding house is off-street parking.
I understand
And they
that,
don't
but
have the off-street parking, and they need parking spots.
I get that, and if we issue the variance, it would be based on the parking lot, or perhaps we could consider issuing
Well,
the
that
variance
was my
on
question.
both off-street,
Exactly.
on-street parking and the parking
But
lot.
yeah, I agree, but that's not what was presented to us.
Sir, can I just say that I think the reason that it wasn't presented, that it just be like, hey, they could just park in the street, is because that would kind of waive the requirement to have parking at all?
Well, they
Like, so
just-
then
they did-
it just doesn't need parking?
They just can't
or-
park on the street.
No.
They need a variance, an
Yeah.
area variance to
Right.
park
Oh,
on
okay.
the street for a boarding
All
house.
right,
Okay?
I think that the other option, we would have had to get 7 variances, one for each off-street parking, and this seemed to be a logical option, given that we're talking 300 feet difference between, qualifying for the waiver, given that the Jensen parking lot's 750 feet. But I hear what you guys are saying, and quite honestly, we would like, we want the
No
the
offense,
variance-
but I don't want it skirting, I don't, and this is not to be negative toward you, but I have a responsibility in zoning, is I don't want to see it skirting around the issue of an area variance for off-street parking, because traditionally, people come to us for an area variance to park on the street.
Right.
Okay, and we make a decision, well, can that street handle 7 more cars, or 3 more cars, or 4 more cars? And this is different. This is saying, all our cars are going to go down to Jansen parking lot, and I'm saying, how do we know that? That's all. Okay, any other?
I get it, I just,
I think if we could find out how much the permit would be to park in the Jensen lot, and we could include that in somewhat of the lease that we have to tenants, that would be
It's required. If you had,
required
if
to
you had the
have.
lease and it was required, then that would,
Obviously, if it's, thousands upon thousands of dollars to get a permit, that wouldn't be prohibitive, but if we could have, it's to our advantage, it's to the neighbors feeling okay with this project, to have, specify to tenants where they can park.
I'm glad you mentioned the neighbors, because the neighbors are going to be pretty upset if those cars are the neighbors. I don't know whose cars they are. I'm sure at some point they're the neighbors because they don't have driveways.
One of them's right behind us, for sure. But what we're trying to provide is, housing for, people.
I have no problem
Right,
with that.
and I think that if we could find out from the town, from the city, what the permit process is to get a permit for the Jensen lot, we could have that as a requirement.
I'm not absolutely certain, but I believe the annual fee for parking permit, municipal parking permit is like $100 a year.
Right. So, if we could, if that was the case, which is very workable, we could include that in the lease, and,
I think that's a good idea.
we would have that, if a new tenant comes in and they have a car, they have to have the permit, and the permit's $100, given if that's the price.
$100, a monthly permit of $20, or an annual permit of $100.
So I think that's a reasonable price, that we would make sure, one way or the other, if a tenant comes in, we're going to have leases that they sign. If they have a car, we would know that in the lease, and it would be in the lease that they are required to purchase, obtain a parking permit.
I mean, there are other restrictions with regard to parking permits that, may pose a bit of a problem.
Okay.
In that nobody is eligible for a parking permit if they've had more than, 3 parking tickets within the previous 18 months. Okay, so it's not as simple as just
Right.
pay $100, you get a parking permit.
Just to make it additionally difficult.
Just, so that's.
Well, as a tenant, you have certain qualifications that you have to meet to sign a lease, and that would be one of them. If you have a car, you would have to qualify for a parking permit. If the restrictions are, I haven't looked at all the restrictions on that, but if they're, simple, like, you have to have no unpaid parking tickets, I think those are workable with our
Well,
situation.
they're not going to be able to sign the lease if they can't get a permit, right? They have to show you the
If they can't get a
permit.
permit, they would need a permit to have a
Right.
car and live at the property.
Are there any other questions? Ari? Question? Mary? Joe?
What's the turnover rate for your property
Well, so it would be a new project. We don't expect, it's not a nightly rental. It's not a, short-term Airbnb rental. So we're, opening it up for professionals. We would expect anywhere, like our goal would be 3 month, 6 month to a year leases.
Thank you. Go ahead.
What if someone doesn't have a car at all?
Then it doesn't apply to them.
All right.
They would be required, if they moved in and 4 months later bought a car, they would be required to notify us and obtain a permit per the lease that we're going to, write.
Now, I just have a question. Who owns the 426 Hasbrouck Avenue?
That's me.
So you're leasing this property to this gentleman and this,
Or selling.
or
No,
selling?
they like to purchase it.
They're going to purchase it
Yes.
if the boarding house permit goes through and the variance. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, we'll consider this after our last agenda item. And
Somebody does want to speak.
no, I
to the
know.
issue.
I'm going to do that now. Thank you, Brian. Would anyone like to speak regarding this? Come on up. No, right?
My complaint is not against these three lovely
Okay,
people. My complaint
we need,
is-
hold on one second.
Pardon me?
Hold on one second, please. I need your name and your address.
All right, my name is Judy Petro. I'm the owner of 422 Hasbrouck, right next door to the
Okay,
property
would
in
you give
question.
her a microphone, please? And repeat that, I'm sorry.
The old days, we just stood up and talked when Noble and,
Well,
okay, now we ready?
yep, your name and
Okay,
address, please.
I'm Judy Petro, the owner of 422 Hasbrouck Avenue.
Okay.
Right next door to the property in question.
Thank you.
There is absolutely no parking. You can't leave your house during the day and come back. Don't come back with groceries because the ice cream's going to melt before you get it in the house.
And where are these
All right.
cars?
Second of all,
Could I ask
That's
you,
it.
could I ask you where are these cars from? The overload of the parking in the
yes,
hospital?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because they lock up that lot. This lot is not open 24 hours a day. They lock at 8:30 at night and don't reopen it till 8:30 in the morning, after the 7 o'clock and 6 o'clock people have gone to work.
Are you saying that the Jensen lot is closed at night?
Street.
No,
Street.
the hospital lot that's
The
right down
hospital
here,
lot, right
Oh, okay.
below us here,
All right.
that lot.
not the Jensen lot.
Yeah, okay.
All right.
Just wanted to clarify because.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure you understood, yes.
And to think that people are going to walk from that big greenhouse right below us here, the next to Monkey Joe's, very slim, extremely slim. They're just not going to do it, all right? Adding to the parking problem, when Rebco wanted to open that property that used to be City Hall Bar, Boyle's Restaurant, West Bar, they were given 10 permits to park in this lot. However, they never gave them a card to get in it. And as a result, now, for some reason and how, I don't know, the city now has 7 signs here that say, for parking, city employees only. So that shot that out of the water. My question is, if it were to be a boarding house also, is that a yearly permit or is that forever?
It's a yearly special permit.
It is a special permit? Okay. Now, I don't
Special
have
use
objections to them, but I don't know, if they make a lot of money, they may say, goodbye, Kingston. You know, and the next guy, I don't want it to be permanent, so,
No, it's a yearly special permit renewal.
okay. Okay. But the parking, we got a lot of people on a short block there.
Just to be clear, the issuance of the special use permit is done by the planning board.
Correct,
And
I know
that's,
that. I was at the
and that's
meeting
because
when
it is
they
a
sent
permit,
it
it
to
can be
you.
open for review.
Yeah.
This variance, if we offer it,
Right.
runs with the property.
Goes with the property
Yes.
permanently?
Yeah,
Yep.
good point, Brian.
It would,
Yep, good point.
okay.
And any stipulations that we put on the approval would go with the property.
Oh.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to speak?
I wanted to point out a few things about the area around this. Oh, thanks. Tanya Garment, 102 Worth.
your mic on.
Thanks. Tanya Garment, 102 Worth Street. I wanted to point out that the neighborhood in which this boarding house is proposed is in many ways a really great place for a more dense development. We have the Broadway streetscape that's about to start construction. It'll have a bike lane. There was the first public meeting of UCAT since the merger, quote-unquote merger, the expansion of UCAT into the city of Kingston on Monday, and they showed the new routes. The routes have been adjusted a bit. Both the yellow and the blue line, which stop very close to this house, will go all the way to Kingston Plaza directly. There'll be somewhat, there won't be the Jansen Avenue transfer spot anymore, but so they're not going to be timed specifically to be a transfer right there, but both buses will pass right there. The yellow bus will be on Foxhall at Broadway, and the blue bus will be on Broadway at Foxhall. So you've got bus lines, you've got a new bike lane. People who decide to live small, in a small footprint, are more likely to bicycle and have a smaller green footprint and have that as sort of the way that they want to live. Often people who live this way choose this way because it's a much less expensive way to live. Often they do it by choice. But even when they don't do it by choice, people who can only afford a room, one of the biggest expenses of housing is a car. And if they're living in what's going to be quite a walkable and multimodal neighborhood, the chances of them having as many cars as people who are one family to a house are going to be quite different. So I also want to just say that I hope that we get more of these kind of housing. We need to have a little more dense development in Kingston. We need to be able to support our bus system. And we need more housing because we also do have a lot of people who are coming here as tourists. So our housing market is changing. So we need many different options for people who live here year-round or even who are visiting to support that industry to use. Thanks.
Thank you for that information on the busing.
I just want to make a point that even though, and it's encouraging to think that maybe some of these people won't have a car, but, you know, we have to make our determinations on the prospect that they may have a car and what impacts those cars may have on the decision-making process that we employ here.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I was just wondering if you get our story or, narrative from the planning board. So our proposed project is to, within the next 3 to 5 years, have this building become a residence for young artists and hopefully be able to include some sort of studio space, working space along with their rooms. So, we're really looking to try to elevate, kind of what's available to the neighborhood. I just wanted to
Thank you.
let you know that it wasn't like we're trying to Airbnb it or anything. I'm a
I
working
understand.
artist myself, and we'd like that to be something we
Okay,
do.
well, we'll discuss it, and you can stay, and we'll hear our decision, or you can leave, and you'll receive a letter. So Either way, whatever your
Okay.
choice is.
Another, just one point regarding transportation. I do believe we would be able to propose a secured, covered bike storage area on the property as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next applicant is owner Donna Spada, Vincent Di Donato. I think there was a letter. Okay, the applicant is seeking an area variance from Chapter 405, the attached to, I don't know what this means. Attachment 2 is that the lot and bulk requirement, Eric, for side and rear setbacks to construct a storage building. Okay, let's get the paperwork. This property is 117 Tremper Avenue in Kingston, Zone M1. Just for the record, to correct the record, the last applicant, the zone was C3 for 426 Hasbrouck Avenue, Zone C3. Okay, we have, I don't think one of you is Donna, but you want to introduce yourselves?
Sure, yeah. My name is Vincent DiDonato. This is my partner, Andy Farmer. We're the owners of the workshop art fabrication at 117 Tremper. We are tenants of Donna's Plaza.
And I believe there's a letter included in here somewhere that she agrees that there is?
There should be.
All right. I won't look for it. I'll take your word, Eric. Okay, could you just give us a brief description of where we're looking at here?
Right, so
Because right now, the requirement is for 50 feet rear and side, and I don't think you're going to have 50 feet. I think you're looking at 8 feet inside and 12 feet back. This is for a 1,200 square foot building.
yeah, 24 by 50 by 16 foot tall ceiling.
Okay, could you give us a little idea what this is going to be used for?
Right, so we manufacture sculpture for artists.
Could you turn your mic on, please? There you go.
Yep. So we manufacture sculpture for artists, and what we do is lost wax bronze casting. So the byproduct or one of the products of the process is rubber molds, and we're required to store rubber molds for the artists, the clients, for up to 6 months after the project is completed. And so to keep up with the flow of our work and have enough storage space, we're looking to construct the building. We're just running short on square footage inside of the production space.
I drove by, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of empty space to be able to put that surrounding that building in the parking lot. I think there was a question, wasn't there, Steve, of some kind of fire issue, inspection issue? Be tabled until you can have the fire chief and you go inspect it? You would want the same thing. You want to have access, obviously, for the fire.
Right, right, okay. Well, what we're looking to put inside of the building are rubber molds, which is silicone rubber, not flammable, with a plaster shell, also not flammable, but we would be putting it on pallet racking, steel pallet racking, so the most flammable material in the building would be the pallets themselves.
Okay, so we'll table this, and they'll make arrangements with you to have come out and do an inspection, and you come next month. I mean, certainly, the setback, variance doesn't seem unreasonable. You're not going to, none of the buildings will have 50 feet another example of
Yeah.
zoning not keeping up with the reality.
Right.
So, does anybody have a question for them?
No, I just want to say that I know exactly what it is that you're looking to store.
Oh, wow, okay.
So, and really interesting, I didn't know there was a Lost Wax, found. You're pouring bronze there too?
We pour bronze, yeah, we
Oh,
keep
had
it
no
pretty
idea.
low profile. We've
That's
been
very
there
cool.
for about 5 years.
Anybody else? Okay, do I have a motion to table this until the next meeting?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0. Okay, we'll see you next month then.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes our agenda. We have tabled one. One is a continuation of the public hearing. We've tabled one. And we have the variance for the parking. What's the pleasure of the board on this? Where'd Brian go?
He's over there.
Oh, okay. What is the pleasure of the board on the parking variance for the boarding house? Granted, I don't have a problem granting it with a stipulation that any leases have wording that they must procure a parking permit for Jansen parking lot.
Provided they have a car.
Provided they have a car, yes. What's the feeling of the board?
I agree.
Okay. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
What's that? Oh, okay. 5-0. Okay, so please, get your approval with the stipulation that the leases have, so please make sure you enforce that, okay? All right. Everyone sign these, please? She's not happy? Ma'am, I'm sure you'll keep an eye on that and let Mr. Kitchen know if there's any abuse of that. Well, you look great.
Happy birthday.
Good. And you don't look 80, let me tell you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we want to meet for consultation, or do we want to adjourn?
Well, any consultation with council is outside the meeting anyway, so
it is?
adjourn the meeting, and then if you...
All right, that's a lot different than what I'm used to. Okay, can we have a motion to adjourn? It's
So moved.
7:50. Brian,
I second.
all right, Brian. Rafferty, Mary, all in favor?